Today we are adding some cards to the binder throughout Magic's history. Let's go ahead and take a look. Welcome everybody to week number 10 of the Binder Collection update. If you don't know how this series works, basically what we're doing is filling out a 12 pocket binder, and each week we take a look at 12 new cards, a full page of new cards that we have added to the binder, look at the value, look at the historic relevance of the cards, and just have some fun collecting Magic cards. Now with that, I have asked that all of you join me in this collection, so create a binder for yourself, pick up some cards that you really enjoy, and share those with us in the comment section below. Now each week we actually like to highlight one of our community members who have actually added something to their binder, and we have our good friend Sadistic Angel, who is not only a good friend in our Discord sharing decks with us, but he is also a channel member, which I encourage you guys to check out. You can do so with that little join button down below. Now we actually have a new card from Sadistic Angel, who says he actually pulled a foil borderless Spara's Headquarters from the brand new Streets of New Capenna set. An absolutely stunning card. We know those Triome lands are really going to hold value. So Sadistic Angel, congratulations, my friend. That is a great pull. Again, guys, if you have a new pull or a new card that you would like to share with us, just leave it in the comment section below. We would love to see what you guys are collecting. With that being said, guys, we are going to jump right into the 12 new cards we're adding to the binder today. Let's see what we got. All right, guys, here we are. We are jumping right in Wooburg order. Our first card is actually an interesting one, Cataclysm, all the way back from Exodus. Now, this card is a sorcery, 2 and 2 white. Each player chooses from the permanents he or she controls an artifact, a creature, an enchantment, and a land, and sacrifices the rest. Now, this is a really interesting card, and one that I thought would be just kind of a fun pickup. Personally, I think I would use this in Cube as a really interesting way of sweeping the board in some meaningful way. The thing about this is, it gets around a lot of things like Indestructible, like Hexproof and that kind of stuff, because the permanents are sacrificed and they're chosen by the player, and so it's a really interesting piece. I didn't actually know this card existed, but it does hold a little bit of value from especially the original printing in Exodus, and so I really like that. It's just a beautiful piece, and it actually ties in artwork wise to one of the cards that we'll see later on when we get to the artifacts as well, which I thought was just really cool. That happened completely at random, but again, a really nice piece, and again, something I plan to use in the cube for sure. All right, moving into blue, we actually have a really funny card. This is the original Arabian Nights version of Flying Men, which surprisingly has a ton of value for a little 1/1 flyer. Now, this is a card that I've always admired just because it's that catalyst for the 1/1 flyer for one. That we saw be, I mean, really good in a lot of scenarios, and actually had its own little Flying Men deck back in the day that I'm sure is still kind of a fun one. But the idea is that you can really take advantage of the evasion with the flying, and because you can get this out so early, it's not like you have to invest a ton of mana. You can actually just get this going really quickly. I do love that this is the original printing. They did a time-shifted version of this in Time Spiral, which I think is cool and does hold a little bit of value, but nothing close to the original Arabian Nights. Obviously, just a really interesting card. I do love the artwork. It's kind of an iconic piece for Magic's history, and so for me, this was one of those that I've always wanted to pick up. Christopher Rush did a great job on the artwork here. Never actually owned this version of Flying Men, and so I don't know, it was something special. It came up and I was like, you know what, I kind of really want to own that. And so I did. I just picked it up and I'm really happy with this. All right, next up, we have another really old card from Revised. We have Hurkyl's Recall. Now, this is actually a really useful card. We see this in a lot of sideboards and things like that because it returns all artifacts target player owns to their hand. So it's great against things like Affinity. It's great against like big artifact heavy decks. And so it's a really nice 2-mana instant that kind of deals with stuff on a tempo level, which I really like. It also gets around the killing them, which in some cases, like Arcbound Ravager, is really good. And so for me, this is just a really awesome card. I do have a number of other versions of this. They've reprinted it a handful of times. We've seen it in Modern Masters 2015 and 10th edition, even in 5th edition, things like that. And so, but I never actually owned a revised edition, and this artwork is absolutely stunning. Really one that I just saw and I was like, ooh, I gotta have that. So this is going to be the one that I plan to use in cube. I do like having an artifact sub-theme, and so having an answer to that artifact sub-theme is always really crucial. Something to consider if you are building your own cube, that you'll want to have some answer for basically every strategy, even if it is just kind of a Hail Mary sideboard card. It is pretty important. So I really like this version. Again, beautiful, beautiful artwork, and really happy to add this to the binder. Next up, and our last blue card, I believe, we have an actual newer card, Tezzeret Betrayer of Flesh, but it is the full art version, which I absolutely love. I'm a really big sucker for these full art planeswalkers, even if the card itself isn't that relevant or even that good. It's the artwork that really gets me, and this is just such a dynamic piece. I mean, you've got this beautiful composition of, you know, this kind of circular composition, or the golden ratio kind of pulling in here, which I really love. And I actually do really like this Tezzeret as well. It does really, really well with artifact sub-themes, which I think is awesome. And while I haven't played much with it in Standard, I do intend to throw this, again, probably in Cube, where that artifact sub-theme can really come alive. And so, for me, this was just a beautiful card. It came up, and I was like, oh, gotta have that. Surprisingly, didn't pull a full art one. I think I did pull a regular one in Kamigawa. But didn't pull the full art, and so I knew I wanted this one. I had to have it. We'll see some other full art planeswalkers later on here, which again I think is just really, really special. In the coming weeks, we're also going to see a huge influx of these planeswalkers, these full arts, and I just love them. All right, guys, we are skipping right over black and heading straight into red, and we actually have only one. It's a Radiant Flames, wow, promo from Battle for Zendikar. Now, this, again, is a really prime example of a card that has very little value. I think it's less than, like, 50 cents. It's basically nothing, but the important thing is that it's just a really beautiful piece, in my opinion. The artwork here, again, is really, really stunning. The foiling, I think, is quite good as well. You can really, really get the detail in the flames. And so it was one of those that I saw and just felt like, yeah, you know what? I'm going to pick it up. I've said before, I'm a big sucker for promos. This is a really good example of why. I love the card frame. I like that you can kind of see through each piece of the card frame. And on top of that, again, just the beautiful artwork, the beautiful foiling is really special to me. And so, no, it doesn't have a lot of value. It adds very little in terms of value to the binder. It's still just a really cool card, a really pretty card, and one that I'm very, very happy to have. Moving into green, we actually have two cards. One is more of a modern staple, or at least used to be, which is Melira Sylvok Outcast. I hope I'm saying that semi-correctly. This is a really interesting card because it was actually used in a Birthing Pod deck quite a ways back in Modern when Birthing Pod was legal. Melira Pod was kind of the code name for the deck. It was really, really good because you could get around and gain infinite life with a lot of things. In particular, it says creatures you control can't have -1/-1 counters on them. That works super well with cards with Persist, like Kitchen Finks, things like that, because you can basically continuously sack them, get them back, and then continue to use their effects, and in that case, to gain infinite life. And so this was a really interesting card for that deck. While it isn't legal anymore, not Melira actually, it's the Birthing Pod is not legal anymore. The Melira really fell off in that regard. You don't see her as much anymore. Still a really good thing to have against things like Infect. It just shuts them down like completely. But again, there are other ways you can do that, and so you really don't see her anymore, but I really love this card. It doesn't hold a ton of value. It's just a really interesting one, and again, when I started getting back into Magic after selling out the first time, Melira Pod was a very popular Modern deck and one that I was really excited to try out. I never actually got to because I didn't play Modern significantly at the time, but I really wanted to, and so this was a special place for that. A little bit of nostalgia for me, and so very happy to have Melira for sure. Our second green card is actually a really interesting one as well. Defense of the Heart. This is a really cool one, not only for the fact that it's actually a good card. Enchantment for 3 and a green during your upkeep. If one of your opponents controls 3 or more creatures, sacrifice Defense of the Heart, then search your deck for up to 2 creature cards, put them into play, and then shuffle your deck. Obviously pretty good when you can just throw 2 creatures onto the battlefield immediately. Works great with decks like Forbidden Orchard, like Oath of Druids, stuff like that. But importantly, it also features artwork by Rebecca Gay, who is one of the most well-known artists on Magic's slate of artists. Very, very beautiful card in my opinion, and a very interesting one. Again, kind of a cube heavy card for me. I thought it'd be a really interesting way to also include kind of a secondary effect for an Oath of Druids combo. And this works really well for that, because if you don't know, Oath of Druids basically lets you do a similar thing but repeatedly, which is kind of ridiculous. This is kind of just a strictly worse version of that. It's a one-shot deal, but you do get 2 creatures, which is awesome. And so I had to get this. I just thought it was a really special card. Not reserve list or anything like that, but it is back all the way from Urza's Legacy, which is really cool, and holds a decent amount of value as well. So absolutely beautiful card. Really stoked to have this. Really excited to try this one out. All right, guys, moving into multicolor, and again, kind of shooting back to the full art Planeswalkers, we're starting off, we've got 2 of these, 2 more to go through. Arlin, the Pax Hope, is a beautiful, beautiful card. Again, that full art Planeswalker, anytime they pop up, they're just like a must-have for me. I think they kind of really pushed that with the Mythic Edition at first, but then they just started doing these versions, which are much cheaper, just beautiful versions of the card. And I just knew I had to have it. The Arlin does have the Moon's Fury on the back, which again is just a beautiful card. And while this again probably isn't going to hold value outside of Standard, it's just a really cool card. The fact that it deals with werewolves is really nice, because there is kind of a sub theme of werewolves and things like Commander that you can really tie into. And I actually really like that. I think it's very, very good for those. And so this isn't a card that I plan to throw in cube or anything like that, but it is one of those cards that I wanted to pick up, wanted to have available, just in case I do decide to kind of jump into a werewolf commander deck or something like that. I feel like Arlin would be really good for that. So again, just a beautiful card, a really nice one to have. And we actually have one more full art Planeswalker to talk about. Now, this one might be my favorite of the newer Planeswalkers, and this is Tamiyo Compleated Sage, an absolutely stunning card. It does feature the Phyrexian mana. It's completed, which I think is a really cool thing, because I am reading a lot of the original novels right now. And so I'm kind of getting all the backstory about what all that means. So if you haven't done that, highly recommend checking that out. But Tamiyo is one of those really interesting cards to me where it just does kind of everything you want it to in a really odd way. It definitely protects itself a little bit with that +1, but that -X where you get to kind of reanimate stuff in a weird way is really, really good. You could do some crazy stuff with that. And just the fact that you can like play her down very, very quickly with the Phyrexian mana is interesting as well. So I don't know. It was one of those, this is a card that I would throw in cube, but it was one of those where I've really enjoyed playing with Tamiyo in a multitude of decks. And so I had to get her. Did not pull this version, annoyingly, in any of my Kamigawa boxes, but I did pull kind of the regular version, as well as I think the other showcase version, if I'm not mistaken. So very happy to have Tamiyo here in the full art. Just absolutely stunning card. And finally, guys, our last multicolor card is an original Lorwyn Gaddock Teeg, which I've always found this card to be really hilarious looking. I just feel like, I get it, he's a Kithkin, so his manner, the artwork is a little silly, but this is a really powerful card at shutting down a lot of decks. Non-creature spells with converted mana cost 4 or greater cannot be played. And non-creature spells with X in their mana cost can't be played. So what this does is really shut down a lot of strategies when you're playing a creature deck, especially like a Death and Taxes style deck. It's really important to have Gaddock Teeg as an option. Usually in sideboard in Modern is where you most likely will see Gaddock Teeg, though I know it does hit some other decks in other places. But it's just a really efficient way at dealing with things. In particular, things like against things like Urzatron, shutting down Karn or Ugin is really, really good. Now, it doesn't shut down the creatures, but it does shut down a lot of the big spells. And so I love this. Great anti-control card as well. Just a really cool one. I did pick this up because I have been playing a little bit more Modern lately. And so I wanted to have this available, but I did want to have the original printing. I do have the Ultimate Masters printing, but I never picked up the original, and so this was a really special one for me. And finally, guys, we have a couple of artifacts to round us out. And again, going back to our first Cataclysm, it did feature Skyship Weatherlight in it. But this is the actual original Skyship Weatherlight printing. This is Apocalypse, or excuse me, Planeshift, not Apocalypse. We have had the Weatherlight printed later on in a new card form. So in Dominaria, we actually had Weatherlight reprinted. Not reprinted, it was a new, you know what I mean. It wasn't this card, but it was another Weatherlight card, which was kind of interesting. But I saw this, and again, because I'm reading the old novels right now, they actually finished building the Weatherlight, and I was like, oh man, that's so cool. Like, what a great piece of Magic history to own. And so I was like, wow, this came up randomly. I was like, well, that's really perfect. And so I did pick this up. It is not reserve list. It's not even that special. In terms of its ability. I mean, it's good, but it's not amazing. It's just one of those cards that I've always wanted to have, and so I picked it up. It's nothing too crazy. It doesn't have a ton of value. It's just a really cool piece of Magic history. And finally, speaking of Magic history, we have Planar Portal. This was from Invasion, which is really interesting, and this actually, again, has a thematic piece to the story, which I thought was really cool. This also is just a really good card, though. An artifact for 6 mana. You can pay 6, tap it. Search your library for a card, put it into your hand, and then shuffle your library. It is expensive, but it's a repeated tutor, which is pretty good, especially in things like Commander, where getting a lot of mana really isn't that difficult. And so this was one of those cards that, again, I felt was just probably good in most Commander decks, and I felt like, yeah, I might as well pick it up. It does have that historic piece. This is part of the Phyrexian Invasion, which I'm actually getting to right now. Which is kind of cool. And so I do love where I'm learning so much in reading the novels about where these cards actually have significance in the story. And if you don't know, they did have a lot of early novels that you can read. They're all on, I use Kindle, so I just read them there, but they're really fun. And it's not the most well-written story in the world, but it is really nice to get the backstory about where these cards actually have significance, where the artwork comes in, where the flavor text comes in. It's really special to me, and so I enjoy this. It doesn't have a ton of value. It's just a pretty cool card, and that actually finishes up the 12 cards this week. So let's jump into the wrap up. All right, guys, so that is the next 12 cards that we have added to the binder. Again, we'll have the values of the binder added here, so you guys can kind of keep track of the percentage complete as well as the value of the binder so far. We're really getting up there in terms of value, which is pretty cool, and we're actually hitting a good portion of the way through the binder as well. So this has been a really fun time. I do want to encourage you, if you haven't started a binder quite yet, that's okay. You can jump in at any time. It honestly doesn't even have to be a binder. If you just picked up a really cool card recently and you want to share it, feel free to. I would really appreciate it. With that though, guys, we are concluding week number 10 of our collection update series. Thank you guys so much for watching. I really do hope you enjoyed this episode. It's been an absolute blast doing this series for you guys and sharing all these collectible cards with you. Thank you guys so much again for watching. I really do appreciate it. I'll see you guys in the next one.